We're going to talk about planting pots for winter. It is mid-October and I just finished planting a few pots, and I'm still planting some pots that are going to grow through winter. Now, I have to tell you that it only occurred to me a couple years ago that there were plants that you could grow through the winter. Up until that time, I would just let my pots go and wait until spring and plant them down again. But a couple years ago, I was up at Martin's Nursery in Malden, South Carolina, and got to talking with one of the nursery workers up there, and he showed me a whole lot of plants, mostly perennials, that you could put in a pot and that would grow through the winter. So that's what I want to share with you today. Wherever you live, unless you live in zone 2 or 3, there are plants that you can grow right through the winter. So let's take a look at that. You know, I live in zone 8B. So most of what I'm going to show you in this video are things that you can grow in zones 7 through 9. Now, I did a lot of research for this post that I wrote up on the journal at jennifershomejournal.com. So go look in the journal and so that you can see some of that, because there are a lot of photographs, a lot of information that I just can't share in a video. So I'd encourage you to take a look at that when you can. Go to jennifershomejournal.com, look in the journal, and look for the Winter Pots post. So if you're accustomed to planting pots, you know that usually you try to select thrillers, fillers, and spillers to kind of balance a pot out. Now, there are no hard and fast rules here, but usually you can get a pretty good selection if you do that. So let me show you what we're talking about without going into too much detail, because you probably already know this. So here's a pot that I planted recently. Actually, the only thing I planted in it was that beautiful filler. It's a hardy cyclamen. But just in order to show you what I mean by fillers, thrillers, and spillers, this tall, hard grass, it's a reed, is my thriller. Usually a thriller is going to be a tall, spiky thing. And in this case, this is a perennial. It's been in here for over a year. My filler is this hardy cyclamen. Last year I had a beautiful little wintergreen in there, but it didn't last through the summer. So I took out the wintergreen and replaced it with the cyclamen. And my spiller, of course, does what spillers do. It's spilling down to the ground, and I've got variegated English ivy in there. Now, variegated English ivy, like most English ivies, is invasive, so you do not want to plant it anywhere where it can escape. But it's a great plant for a pot. So this is a pot that I planted just about a week ago, and you can see I saved the perennial creeping jenny, that's the spiller. I saved the hard reed, that's the thriller. I saved the euphorbia, that's an ascot spurge euphorbia, as a filler as well. And then I added in some pansies and these wave violas that will spill over the side as well. So these guys will fill in, and it'll be a really nice looking couple of pots. This is an edible pot, and I plant this outside my back door every year. This one is featuring thyme as a spiller, also the little violas as a spiller. I have a curly leaf parsley, a flat leaf parsley, and a sage there in the back. All of these are edible. The sage has been in there, and the thyme has been in there for over a year now. Those are both perennial herbs, and I just try to keep them cut back. The thyme is looking a little bit scraggly, but I'll trim it up and it'll fill back in over the winter. Let's take a look at this renovated pot. I planted this yesterday. I'm pretty pleased with it. The Dracaena, the spikes in the back, one of my my thrillers, have been growing in there now for over a year. And then the fern that's back there, I believe is an evergreen fern. If it's not an evergreen, I may put a Christmas fern back there if the frost kills it, but I'm pretty sure that's an evergreen fern. Let's walk back here so we can get a little closer to the rest of it. This is a Merlot euphorbia. Isn't that gorgeous? I just love the color. And it does remind you of Merlot. The stems on it are so pretty. In the center, we have a lemon cypress, a dwarf lemon cypress that is so cute. Here is some creeping sedum. It's going to be my spiller. And it is an evergreen. It'll spill over the sides and I'll be so happy. For one of my fillers for color, I've got cyclamen. And once that stops blooming, I'll have these gorgeous, gorgeous leaves that are supposed to be hardy through most of the winter. Over here, there's more of the creeping sedum. And then back here, I have coral bells, hikura. And I just love that. I love the silvery leaf on that. Isn't it pretty? On my front porch, I have replanted these and I'm really pleased with this. So let me show you around. I had to pretty much tear out everything that was in there because it was just not doing well. So this is a euonymus. It's called a winter creeping euonymus. It is a considered an invasive plant, so I don't want to let it escape from the pot. But it is a gorgeous, gorgeous plant, and you can see that it has all these roots on it. So it would readily take root if I let it. I cut back my Dusty Miller, and I'm going to let that come back from the base. Back here we have a Merlot euphorbia, and this is a spurge, similar to what I have in my other pots. This is a different color. It's a really pretty plant. They like shade. Over here I have some of the wave violas that will spill over the side. And then back here is a Christmas fern, and this Christmas fern is an evergreen. It will stay green all winter, and it's supposed to be hardy all the way down to zone 3, y'all. So I would love to know if you plant this in a pot, whether it grows through your winter. This is red vein dock, and I am not familiar with this. I need to ask about whether or not. Look at those. Beautiful. Look at all these snapdragons. So this is something that I have grown through winter pretty successfully. These are different sages. What did I tell you? More ornamental kales. So many different kinds. Ornamental vegetables. Varieties you can get. Oh gosh, that smells so good. Upright varieties and trailing varieties. But rosemary makes a really, really nice filler in a pot. Another stone crop. This one is a blue spruce. Just kind of reminds you of the spruce, doesn't it? This one. Look at that. It reminds me of cauliflower. Bogan sedum. There's another sedum. This is a lemon balm sedum. Don't you love that color? course, here is our Vinca minor. Makes a very nice spiller.
Hey friends, I'm Sam McCauley. I work here at Martin Garden Center in Greenville, South Carolina, and we're going to talk about winter evergreen container gardening. You should do your pots over winter. There's no point not to. During spring and summer, most garden centers will have the most exciting and diverse stuff in a bunch of different colors, but at least for me, I really enjoy the fall and winter container gardening because there's discrete options. That is, we have full tables, but there's really much of the same stuff out here. However, given that there's a bunch of the same stuff, you can really tease out what colors you want and what combinations you might want to use in your winter containers. To begin with, for us, we have these 1 gallon evergreen shrubs. We call these thrillers. They're evergreen, so no matter how cold it's going to get over winter, these are going to have foliage on them, so it makes it at least look like you have plants growing. This is sky pencil holly. It's a classic. We have them in 1 gallons here, so they can fit in most containers. Just take care though, if you go for any of these evergreen containers, you're investing money in this and you'll be investing time in this. Just imagine where this plant would go at the end of the day in your landscape rather than in the trash. We're here in our bedding area, which is almost all pansies. We have some snapdragons, but if they don't have color, you're not going to get color till springtime. I've chosen here for the thriller of our winter container that we're going to make a sky pencil holly. These grow very tall and narrow, and if you could look closely at the leaves, they kind of have a blue-green finish, and I'm going to pick flowers that are going to bloom all through winter to draw out and contrast with that blue-green. What I've chosen here is yellow with blotch pansy. I really like yellow with blotch because the blotch on the face is kind of a dark red brown, and among all the pansies that we have for sale, these are the most fragrant. Next, we're picking out our spiller for the container. We've got our thriller, sky pencil holly, filler here, yellow with blotch pansy. The first spiller that came to mind for me are these Marina trailing pansies. Each trailing pansy spreads about 2 feet, so it's a really great investment for wintertime pots. All the plants that I have here are gonna last down to low double digits, so you know, the teens. I've even had trailing pansies last in the single digits. It died back a little bit, but you can clean it up. Marina here came first to mind, and I really like it because it's kind of a purpley color. I think it plays off well with the blue that's hard to see in the sky pencil holly. And these yellow with blotch pansies really draw your eye to it. However, you don't have to go with Marina. There are so many pansy colors to choose from for spiller. If you don't want Marina, you might want something a little more classy and perhaps understated. This is called Frost. What Frost does, some of the flowers turn out all white, which is nice. Others of them have just a really subtle blue flag to them. If you want to take it even further and play off the yellow from the yellow with blotch, these are called Morpho trailing pansies. They are definitely periwinkle here in the flags, and they have a bright, cheery yellow face to them. Whichever way you go, they're all going to spread the same, and they all take the same care. It's up to you to choose what colors you want to go for. What you can do, if you don't need any spiller, you can take it even further, the yellow, with this evergreen ornamental grass. This is called sweet flag. It's yellow sweet flag. This is evergreen. This is going to last in this pot over winter with the rest of the plants that we've chosen here. Here we have a container that one of my coworkers made that's ready for sale. This is called a drop-in, where the garden center puts things in a pot. It's in a black nursery pot, so if you have a container at home, you don't have to plant with dirt in your container. You can take this and drop it right in. This is fully planted. You might notice if you get up close that there is some bare soil here. That's not a problem. Let me dissuade everyone possibly listening to this to not fall for the trap of instant gratification. What I mean by that is no soil showing. This looks like it's been growing for a couple months and it looks really full. Don't fall for that trap. You don't want to overplant because this is going to get bigger and send out roots. These pansies are going to get bigger and spread and fill in the pot really well. Each one of these individual pansies spreads and gets as tall as 8 inches in both directions. I want to encourage you to not need your pot to be Instagram ready right at the beginning. The point of container gardening is to buy your plants knowing what you want with respect to textures and colors, and then giving it time through your labor to make sure it gets full and looks full at the end of the day when you're ready to show it to other people. One way you can hide soil in this, we haven't done it here, but any kind of decorative bark can really hide soil and elevate the look of your container. For example, you can find orchid bark almost anywhere. It's a really pretty red color and it hides the soil perfectly fine, and it's a mulch during any kind of hot weather we might have for these pansies. What works well with this container, given everything that we've just talked about with thrillers, fillers, and fillers, is that the sky pencil holly here is in the center. So there's no side to this pot. That is, it's supposed to be viewed all the way around. The colors chosen kind of give a Monet effect. That is the artist. You have a really pretty yellow here with green down in the center, a nice blush blue, a rosy red, and then small cute little penny white violets that are just gonna explode with a bunch of little white flowers. This is a really effective container. Could go on a patio, could go in a part sun spot and do pretty well. And once again, everything in here, evergreen.
Can you tell us a little bit about care and feeding of something like this over the winter?
Sure. Plants respond to the weather, right? Over winter, container gardening is very easy because given the lower temperatures, kind of the little bit more rain that we're supposed to have, but it doesn't always happen, and the shortening days, the plants simply need less water, so maintenance is lower on a pot like this. However, given that water's less, we've picked out plants here that are high maintenance. They're high maintenance in 2 main ways. All these pansies and violets suck down fertilizer like no other plants. Think of these like orchids. All these flowers are really intricate and complicated, and they take a lot of energy. When it comes to orchids, I like to tell people you have to take care of the plant when it's blooming because each one of those flowers are a first date. It's going on a dozen first dates every night. That's really expensive. You have to take care of it. You can choose to do organic fertilizing. For a container, that doesn't necessarily make sense because it's better for that organic stuff to go into your yard, that is your soil. So synthetic fertilizer, here's the answer. I don't care if it's a powder you dissolve in water. I don't care if it's a long-term release granular fertilizer. What matters is that it has fertilizer so that these pansies can keep showing color. The point of this pot is the annuals. This is a perennial, this Carex here, the sky pencil holly is a perennial. They're always going to give you color. Cater to these annuals because these are what are going to make the pot show-stopping and really catch your eye at first, not these other things that are really just filling in. And here's what I mean by a drop-in container. A good garden center is going to have these for you, so look for that as a mark of quality for a garden center. We picked out this pot. I quite like it because it does have kind of a repeating geometric thing with these squares that are hard to see, and it has a volcanic finish, which was kind of in vogue during COVID, and just a couple of red notes through it that makes it really cute. The manufacturer of this is Lotus International. We tried dropping the pot in and it kind of sinks a little bit, so we can fix that very easily. I've got an empty hanging basket container here. This is what you find plants in. Dropping it into the bottom, and if I place this gently enough on top of it, it sits perfectly so that it looks like it's actually planted in this container. You'll notice though that we have a couple inches of gap on either side. Not a problem. If this is in a covered space, you can get some decorative Spanish moss or other tchotchkes from the yard that makes sense and just fill in around here to make it look like it's actually more full than it is.
So I planted these for my daughter, and these are the plants that Sam showed us. We've got that pencil holly, and underneath is the pansy with the blanche, and a little bit of English ivy is just stuck in there. We've got that sweet flag back there, a viola that's going to spill, and then because this is a drop-in pot and the pot is actually a bit taller than the planter, I just picked some cryptomeria and put it in there because it's what I had. So as the plant grows, the cryptomeria, of course, is going to dry out and die, and we'll just take that out as the plants grow in there and start to fill in.
The workhorse of the fall and winter container garden, and really any annual planting, are ornamental vegetables. These are kales and cabbages. These are something that you can eat off of. Just take care that whoever grew it for you, I hope you grew it yourself, that know what pesticides it has. Everything wants to eat this, including us. That is aphids, worms and caterpillars, deer, squirrels, groundhogs. Everything wants to eat this. So growers of this will know that and take care of it with pesticides. So proceed with caution. Most people will pass these by. It's kind of confusing why they would, because all they will ever see is this green leaf to it and think, why would I want that in a container? It's just green. This is called kamome red. It's a kind of flowering kale. You'll begin to notice, especially as our days shorten and we get colder at night, it is beginning to color up. The veins in here are kind of a really pretty purple red, and then the deeper we get into that growing space, it's even more purpley red. Incredibly versatile. We have some cranes over here that we'll show in a second. You can strip off the leaves of it and make it look almost like a rose form, and they too color up. What most folks will do with these is simply plant them, but you can do more. If you bought this, I want you to plant this as deep as possible. I would probably plant it right up to here, especially where the flower or the leaf buds are starting to color up really well. It'll be nice and compact. It'll root along this stem, so you don't have to plant it as you bought it. Another thing that many people don't know is on this one, the point of this is the center right here, but if you plant it like this, you won't be able to see it, especially if you want people to see it from the road. So you take this, you plant it at an angle. There's nothing wrong with that. The police won't come and question you about it. Do this so that you can actually have that showing out to people and showing out to you when you pass by your container. Excellent spring and fall and winter annual. You will tear these up when they're about done blooming in springtime. I want you to leave the flowers, they're pretty yellow. Leave the flowers on it. It's for those early pollinators, and they appreciate the food. If it were my home and I have full sun, especially where I would put some front door containers, I'm gonna make an edible container for full sun that is both evergreen over winter and obviously available for me to pick off of if I ever needed to. To me, an edible container makes a lot of sense, just given its economy. You spend a little bit on plants, you get your front porch pots to kind of decorate for the season, but you also get something out of it too, and it would encourage you to take care of it, I suppose. For an edible container, I would always strongly encourage you to use organic fertilizers, whether that's a liquid one and a granular one, anything like that, just because I want you to eat something that a plant would happily eat. Here, I have this display of options for spillers, thrillers, and fillers, and we're just gonna play with each and see where it goes. For thrillers, I've got two options here. This is my favorite variety of Swiss chard. Yes, this is the plant or the leaves that you can buy off the grocery shelf, Swiss chard. This one's called peppermint. It has really pretty pink striping through the stem, or rather the leaf stem, and it kind of gives a peppermint effect. I really enjoy it. You could also do rosemary as a thriller. Rosemary are effortless, especially in containers. They're evergreen. They kind of bloom during winter too, which is an added bonus. Here is blue spires. I chose this because blue spires wants to grow straight up and it gives a really pretty frosty blue color, especially towards next year as it warms up. Thrillers. For spillers, I have two options. You could use trailing pansies. This is the variety Strawberry Swirl, one that I tend to go after every year. What's edible on this plant are the flowers. If you're watching Bake Off right now, they're using a lot of flowers on their desserts and cakes, and it makes too much sense. They are edible, and there's nothing wrong with adorning any kind of food with it. You could alternatively use a thyme. This is silver thyme. I like silver thyme because I think it spreads the most. It has a nice kind of both thyme and lemon flavor, somewhere like an English thyme or a lemon thyme. This will spill over the side of the pot. Come May, you should find little flower spikes all over it that the bees and butterflies enjoy. Silver thyme, completely edible. This is what you season food with. Smells awesome. For fillers, I'm giving you three options here, one of which, or a few of which I hope you haven't thought of. This is a lavender face violet. Once again, it's a small plant, a bunch of small happy flowers. In the same vein as the trailing pansy, these flowers are edible and can be used on desserts, salads, whatever you like. A filler. I have here flat leaf Italian parsley, another filler for overwinter. Evergreen. Many recipes call for parsley. Why spend $3 every time you go to the grocery store on parsley when you could have it on your front porch and pick off of it when you need to? Take care, parsley is a biennial, so come next year, it's gonna get really big. Let it go to bloom, it'll be ugly, but the pollinators appreciate it. Let the caterpillars devour it if you want. That's as natural food for them. The last filler I have here is lettuce. Lettuce makes a great filler. You can grow lettuce almost any time of year, at least in South Carolina, in our zone 8A area. It's the heat, and especially full sun during the heat, that's going to encourage it to bloom. That is bolt, and when it does bolt, it doesn't taste good after that, so it'll need to be ripped up there. However, this wildfire mix just provides such a really nice blend or pop of color that you can pair with almost anything. You don't have to go for peppermint Swiss chard, for example. At least here at our garden center, we have maybe 4 or 5 different varieties to choose from right now, and around a dozen available to us to buy to sell here. Take your pick, have fun. You don't need a boxwood, you don't need a holly, you don't need an ivy, you don't need a fern, especially if you're doing full sun. Why not do an edible container? It makes too much sense. We are here in our shade arbor. We just spent so much time talking about a full sun planter, but there's plenty to do over winter too. One of the first things I'm going to show you is the thriller for our shade planter. It's this same evergreen grass that I showed you for our full sun one. This is okay. Grow this in shade. There's nothing wrong with that. The reason is, most folks will tell you if it's a full sun plant, don't put it in shade, it's not going to do well. What they're not saying is that it won't bloom as much as it could, or it won't bloom at all, or it'll get leggy and just not be what you wanted or what you expected. This variegated sweet flag here is perfectly fine for shade. It's a grass. The point is not the flowers on it, so there's no concern there. What will change about this in shade is that it'll turn more of a chartreuse rather than a bright yellow. Kind of like creeping Jenny. If you've ever had creeping Jenny in full sun, yes, it's a golden yellow, it's very pretty. If you bring creeping Jenny into shade, it's gonna turn that limey, chartreusey green and still grow, still live, still be a living plant in your landscape. Evergreen thriller right here, nothing wrong with it. We also have heuchera or coral bells. Here at Martin Garden Center, we grow all the heuchera we sell. We pride ourselves in it. We have too many, come look at them. This is Indian Summer Silverberry. It might be hard to see here in the shade, but it has really pretty fields of silver to it with kind of dark green veins, and the treat of it is if you flip it over, you've got a red purple underneath. These are evergreen. They will stay above ground year round. Maintenance on these, probably can't get lower with respect to other plants you could buy. They bloom in springtime, and some of them have really colorful flowers, some of them are just kind of plain and white, but they're all the same. They all kind of grow to about this tall, with the flowers presenting up in here. Maintenance on these is just picking off dead leaves, effortless. For spillers in shade, for fall and winter, you can't get flower color, or at least flower color that's going to be worthwhile. Here we have Gnome English Ivy. The variety is called Gnome. I really like Gnome because it puts out many more smaller, slightly five-parted, mostly three-parted leaves. All English Ivy is effortless. I would invite you, if you need a special horticultural variety of English Ivy, go to a garden center, you'll find it there, but dig it up from your yard. It's free, and it grows just fine in containers no matter what variety or species it is.
And it's invasive, so digging it up from your yard is probably a really good idea.
Really good idea. If it were up to me, no garden center would sell English Ivy anymore, but I can't change the world.
I put in all of my, every time I find it in one of my pots, I mention that it's invasive, and I mention that you should not let invasives escape the pot.
Nope, never. So this is a fall and winter container. Evergreen, thriller, filler, spiller. You do have springtime bloom in here for shade. The English Ivy can be trimmed up at your leisure to make it grow more full. And this variegated sweet flag can go just about anywhere in your yard after it's kind of outlived its container.
So I'd like to thank Sam McCauley, who got me started on this big inquiry a couple of years ago. Had I not run into him at Martin Garden Center and asked him a whole lot of questions and had him show me plants, I would probably still be waiting until the first frost killed everything and yanking all of my annuals out of their pots and wheeling everything out to the back, and I'd have a barren looking winter garden. So thank you, Sam, for so graciously sharing your expertise and your time. I really appreciate it, and I know everyone who's watching this will as well. So I wanted to just leave you with a couple of thoughts about some things to remember when you're planting winter pots. Like planting a winter garden, it's best to start with your perennials and your evergreens first, to really plant around those things, both as a cost-saving measure because you don't have to take those things out come spring. You just take out the annual and replace it with annual color, but also because of the fact that these are the things that are going to provide you with that growth throughout the season. Keep in mind that watering, you don't need to water as much. In fact, if you water too much, plants and pots will succumb to root rot, so don't overwater. But do be sure that you water through the winter, especially if you live in an area that where you aren't getting much rain. Another thing to keep in mind is to put your pots on a regular fertilizer schedule. These kinds of things, they require a lot of food, especially when they're flowering. And so if you have flowering plants, be sure that you feed them regularly. I like to put a slow release fertilizer in when I plant, and then every couple of weeks maybe hit it with a little a watering can with a little Miracle Grow in it. But you know, whatever, make sure that you're feeding your plants, your pansies, your violas, your plants need food if they're going to water or if they're going to flower. Also, don't forget to trim your plants. Take off, you know, things that are dead and things that are yellow, and trim your trailing, your spillers, because trimming, especially of an ivy or of a spiller, is going to improve lateral branching and make it more full. And so rather than letting things just grow and trail and trail and trail, trim them and get them to become fuller. You saw one of my pots that has thyme over here. I haven't been trimming that like I should, and so it's gotten a little rangy looking. So if I take the scissors to it and trim it back, it'll be better. It'll be better. And then let's just experiment a bit to find out what works for you in your zone, in your yard, in your microclimate. I have a very protected area here, and I'm sitting in my dooryard. I've got brick all over the place, and it provides a lot of protection and quite the little microclimate all through the winter. You may have other areas in your yard that are similar, where you could tuck a pot into a corner or something like that, and so that it would get a little bit of shelter from cold and moderating temperatures. So just keep that in mind. Also, go to your local nursery and talk to your nursery people about what do they recommend that you grow in pots over the winter. This video was primarily about growing containers in zones 7, 8, and 9. But I'll be going to Indiana next week, and I'm very hopeful that I'm going to be able to stop by Allisonville Nursery and pick their brains about, well, what can you plant in a pot in zone 6, and maybe even what would grow in zone 5. So, do a little experimentation. If you're like I am, and I just started doing this a couple of years ago, I've learned so much about what works and what doesn't work, and you will too. A lot of trial and error. You'll kill some things. I've killed plenty. But it's pretty rewarding when you can step outside your door and your winter landscape is green and colorful, and even if it's just in a spot here or there. So anyway, enjoy. Check out my website, jennifershomejournal.com, and check out the blog that accompanies this. There's a lot of information on there that I couldn't put in video form, so I hope you'll check that out, and I'll be back soon. See ya.